What's up, guys? I'm Seth.
And I'm Lauren, and today we're in San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah, we've been in Texas now for a few weeks. This is not our first time in Texas. We actually can't really get enough of it. We keep coming back. So today we're going to talk about the things about Texas that have surprised us.
It's starting to rain, so we're going to head back into our hotel room and let you know about these 7 surprises.
Yep.
The number one thing is friendliness, how nice the people have been here. It's honestly been a true showcase of what Southern hospitality is.
Yeah, because both of us, we're both from North Carolina and we've lived in Georgia. And honestly, North Carolina's often considered the South as well. But for us, we were thinking that Southern hospitality is kind of a myth because in a lot of ways, like North Carolina and South Carolina, we like to say that people are nice, but they're not kind. They are nice to your face, and then they might talk about you behind your back or something like that.
They put a smile on their face, and then you walk past them, and they're like,
yeah. Obviously, there's the term Southern hospitality, but I've never really seen it before until Texas. So to me, Texas is the friendliest state in the South and one of the friendliest states in the entire country.
Now, with that being said, we're going to add this surprise into the friendliness of the people. It's just that it surprised us how aggressive people drive here.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but like people are crazy on the roads.
Yeah, it's hilarious because like I'll have like a big truck riding down the freeway, pushing me off the road just about. And we get off at an exit, they get off too, and like we park near them, and I'm like, okay, is this going to be like a fight? What's going to happen now? Getting out of the car, and then just like, hey buddy, how you doing? You know, like, wait. Yeah, it's so
you don't
weird.
Remember what just happened?
Yeah, but that probably has something to do with just how fast you can drive.
Yeah, the speed limit is insane. If you didn't already know, Texas has the highest speed limit in the country. There's a small stretch of highway between San Antonio and Austin where it gets up to 85 miles per hour. But not only that, just the regular highways, they go up to 75, which is still more than what we're used to. Like where we're from, it's usually just 70 and it doesn't get any higher than that.
So that's probably part of the reason too why the driving feels so aggressive to us, especially.
Another thing that really surprised us about Texas is just how biodiverse this state is. It's one of the top most biodiverse states that we have, and we can really tell.
For instance, right outside of San Antonio, there is actually the largest bat colony in the world, a colony of 20 million bats. And then in Austin, there's the largest what they call urban bat colony underneath a bridge. That kind of goes to show you just how insane it is, like the amount of wildlife you can see.
It's uncanny, just the amount of wildlife you can see in Texas.
Yeah, even in January, we have seen insane amounts of birds just like out in city areas, like hanging out in the Whataburgers and In-N-Out Burgers. They're just there on the power lines, on the signs, thousands and thousands of birds. There's a viral video going around, multiple viral videos going around, I think, of like Texas Walmart parking lots, which are just thousands and thousands of birds.
Well, thousands of grackles are taking over Houston again. Take a look at this video from Wednesday night. You can see thousands of the black birds just, flying and resting in a parking lot, many of them on top of cars. Look at that poor woman trying to make it to safety.
The state of Texas is estimated that it has about 2/3 of the entire nation's bird species, which is pretty wild. We've seen some really colorful birds ourselves in some of the parks we visit, some of the signs they have up.
A lot of birds that live in Latin America or like are from Latin America, the farthest they'll come up north is Texas.
That brings us to the other surprise in this category, and that is just how green and tropical a lot of places are in Texas.
Yeah.
Like, we've been doing a lot of exploring around the southernmost city in Texas, which is Brownsville. So we've been sort of getting a bit more of that. Obviously, a huge portion of the state is not as much like that.
But I always thought it was just kind of like dry, flat landscapes. A lot of it is, but I was just so shocked to see that a lot of it is also very green and very tropical.
Yeah.
I love that type of geography and landscape, so I think it's really cool.
Yeah, it's special because we have very few places in the U.S. that are both warm and green year-round. This is sort of like Florida in that atmosphere. In a big portion of southeastern Texas, you have places that are green and warm year-round.
Now, with all that being said, one major thing that surprised us is the landscape. So Texas has the Texas Hill Country, which is a massive region with hills, awesome rock formations.
And the coolest thing about Texas Hill Country is that the rivers are like crystal clear. There's so many clear water blue swimming holes. Further west, you have the Guadalupe Mountains, which is the largest mountain region in Texas. Those are really special because they're actually ancient fossilized coral reefs. And then you have, of course, like Big Bend National Park. It's like canyons and it's mountainous and rocky. Texas is not as flat as you probably think. Mixed with hill countries, several different mountain ranges.
And also, for some reason, whenever I thought of Texas, I didn't really think of like it being a beach destination, but Texas has some amazing beaches along the Gulf of Mexico. We were just at South Padre Island, Boca Chica, Corpus Christi, and we were just shocked at how awesome their beach destinations are.
All right, so this next surprise is sort of both a pro and a con. We both kind of noticed that in some ways we feel like there's a lot of freedom here, things that you can do here that you couldn't do in other places. Like for instance, being able to drive down the beaches. Seems like a small thing, but it's pretty weird for us. Like there's like bits and pieces of North Carolina where you can drive out on the beach, but here you can drive literally for miles and miles and miles. And it's common to see, I mean, hundreds of cars are out driving directly on the beach. And then of course, Texas is a pretty good tax state, so that's another way it feels pretty free. You don't pay any income tax, but it's on the better half of tax states. So there's some freedom there, but it does sort of feel like a police state in some ways with the lack of freedom when it comes to policing. For one thing, you have just a lot of patrolling. Of course, with the border being close by, you have the National Guard, you have Border Patrol, you have police. And one thing that's kind of surprised us is the fact that you can be stopped and searched even away from the border. For instance, when we traveled through the state from Mexico, we came in on a Greyhound. We were actually stopped about 35 miles away from the border. We all had to leave our belongings on the bus, and we had to empty out on the bus, and basically the driver, none of us had any control on how long that stop was going to be. They just stopped us, searched us, asked us questions. They were actually going to keep us for about an hour. We ended up being held for about 30 minutes.
But this most recent time, we were actually 90 some miles away from the border, leaving Brownsville, Matamoros area and going up north. And they stopped, you have to go, like the highway redirects into like an inspection station.
Yeah, federal inspection station, where we were approached by a guy with a dog. And he asked us a bunch of questions about where we were going, where we had been.
Like why we were here.
Where we were
from.
Like
what we were doing in Texas.
Yeah. And that's almost 100 miles away from the border.
Where you guys going?
We're heading to San Antonio.
From down here?
No, we're from North Carolina.
We're in North Carolina.
So in that way, Texas feels sort of like a police state and not very free. To add to that, Texas is actually one of the few states where officers are actually legally allowed to place you under arrest for a Class C misdemeanor, which doesn't carry any jail time at all. It's up to a $500 fine. That can be like a traffic infraction. At the officer's own discretion, they can go ahead and decide to place you under arrest, and you can spend the night in jail. So that's still a law in Texas, so you really have to be careful here.
So now that we touched on taxes, we're going to go ahead and cover cost of living, because that was another big surprise for us. Yeah. The cost of living here in Texas is actually not bad at all. Like, it's a lot of the cities are below the national average. Yeah. So that just like shocked us.
Not for what you get. Like San Antonio, which is my personal favorite city in Texas. I don't know if it's yours as well.
Yeah, I love San Antonio.
Love San Antonio, and it scores like a 75 out of 100. With 100 being the U.S. average, national average for housing, and that's on bestplaces.com. That's surprising me because I think this is one of the most livable cities. We've also been getting really good hotel prices in Brownsville, South Padre Island, and San Antonio. We haven't even paid more than $50, which is pretty wild. We get like very standard hotels, but still $40-some per night. I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there. That does not include the city of Austin. Austin is outrageously expensive. The housing is through the roof, and every time we've tried to stay at a hotel there, we paid around close to $100, and the hotel has been terrible.
Yeah, terrible.
So if you want a nice hotel, you got to start at $200 in Austin and go up from there. Austin is definitely more expensive, but you do have cities like Houston, San Antonio, Brownsville, and places like that on the eastern side. I think El Paso is also very affordable. On the western side, Texas is a good tax state, which doesn't hurt anything. And the gas prices have been phenomenal here.
Yeah, definitely want to throw that in there. The gas prices have been great. We've literally averaged, I think, around $2.85 every time we go.
For what you get here in Texas, you get cities with booming economies, beach, coast, good weather. I think it's a great bargain to live here. Next up is diversity in population. Obviously, Texas gets a reputation of like cowboys, country, big
ranches.
Ranches. Big trucks, country music, guns, things like that. And that is here. You do see that quite a bit. But it's also an extremely diverse state. Actually, Houston is the #1 most diverse city in the USA. That alone.
Yeah, and Texas is the second most diverse state in the U.S. under California.
Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't know that, but that's impressive.
I didn't know what people meant when they said everything is bigger in Texas, but now I do.
Yeah, so you probably knew we were going to come to this category. It's kind of obvious, but it really is insane. When you get here, everything does really feel bigger, and that's actually because it is. It really is bigger in Texas. It has 3 of the USA's top 10 most populated cities: San Antonio, Houston, Dallas. So that is insane in itself. The cities here are huge, but that's not all. So let's just talk about some amazing facts about how massive Texas actually is.
It's a humongous state. It's
Yeah.
the largest state, other than Alaska, but
Yeah.
the largest state in the lower 48 states by land area.
Yeah, and actually 15 of the smallest U.S. states could fit into Texas simultaneously. Rhode Island could fit into Texas about 221 times, and the state of Texas is larger than any country in Europe.
Well, no, speaking of Rhode Island, an interesting fact is that the largest ranch in the United States, which is called King Ranch, it is larger than the state of Rhode Island.
The Dallas airport is larger than the island of Manhattan. And thank God the speed limits are higher here, because if they weren't, driving through Texas would honestly feel like purgatory in some ways. But one thing we wanted to touch on about Texas is that it's actually extremely artistic and even very quirky, a little bit bizarre, which is not really a surprise because you have a state of almost 30 million people. Of course, there's going to be a ton of artists and lots of artistic communities. When we visited the panhandle of Texas, we went to Amarillo.
Oh yeah, we went to Cadillac Ranch, and
Yeah.
it's like a bunch of old Cadillacs sticking out of the ground, and you can go spray paint them. What's pretty cool is that Austin's city slogan is "Keep Austin Weird."
Yeah, sort of
So-
similar to like Portland, Oregon. In fact, there's even something called the Cathedral of Junk in Austin, where one guy has taken random junk and turned it into a cathedral. There's like a museum of funeral history in Houston. And then there's another spot somewhere in the middle of Texas that we've always wanted to visit. It's in a town called Marfa. It's like a little mock Prada store out in the middle of the desert in Texas, and it looks really, really cool. In South Padre Island, we went to this little isolated beach that has now been called a nude beach, even though it's not officially a nude beach. Called UFO Beach, and that's where Bowie has sort of like marooned on the beach, and people have just put insane amounts of art on it.
Yeah, and that adds to like Texas feeling very free. Like they basically made their own nude beach unofficially.
Which is another reason we bring this up, is because like Texas is called the Lone Star State. It's supposed to capture the spirit of Texas, the individualist spirit, like I'm going to go do this myself. And while that's not really a surprise or a shock, it might not be something you traditionally think of when you think of Texas, but it is very artistic, and the quirky side has kind of surprised us. I think you could have a whole checklist of quirky and bizarre bucket list attractions here in Texas.
All right, everybody, we wanted to keep it brief, so that is it on the 7 things that surprised us most about our visit here in Texas. We just wanted to be honest and kind of give you guys basically almost like a first impression. This is just a really surprising state to us, and we've loved our visit here so far.
Let us know what we missed. What are some things that surprises you about Texas, or that's some things you love or hate about Texas? We'd love to hear your comments below. We're definitely going to keep exploring the state and learning more about it.
So if you like the video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.